Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. This is my review of the Montech Air X Rgb. This is a, RGB case with 3 included ARGB fans that comes in at a pretty decent price of around 65 bucks is what you can frequently find it for. One of the biggest selling points of this case is up front. It does have those 2 included 200mm ARGB fans that will give you pretty good airflow with a 120mm just normal ARGB exhaust fan in the back. At 65 bucks, this case has pretty decent value. So I guess with that out of the way, let's get into the full review. Starting off with airflow, as that can kind of make or break a case. The stock airflow setup is pretty great. It is a very much positive pressure with those, again, 2 200mm exhaust fans that get really good intake through this mesh that has pretty big holes in it, and then there's another mesh behind it, but those fans are still able to get plenty of air in through there. And they did do a good job making sure those 200mm fans, they didn't just go and obstruct half of it like other cheap cases like to do sometimes. Other than that, again, normal 120mm exhaust fan. For this case, if you would want to add any more fans, the only place you can add them is here on the top panel. This would be a great spot to add like the radiator for an AIO on this case. And yeah, up here you just get your standard 2 120 or 140mm mounts. Also up on the top you do have this metal mesh thingy that's supposed to be a filter, but judging from how well it works on my case, these don't seem to really do a ton, but they do look pretty nice. And then you have your standard assortment of front panel stuff, being power, your just standard power LED, hard drive LED, reset switch, 2 USB 3s, a USB 2, headphone, microphone, and your RGB switch. So I guess let's go cycle through the RGB modes on this case. Alright, here are your RGB modes if you're going to be using the internal RGB header, which works pretty good. So right now this is just kind of a red fade, but going through you have this all of the actual effects where the fan is going to be more than one color at the same time look pretty choppy on these fans, just because they don't have like a ton of actual LEDs in them. They are plenty bright, but on the fans there's only, I think it's either 10 or 12 individual LEDs, so any effect like blade is going to look pretty choppy on these fans, a lot more than they do on the included fans in DIY PC cases I've looked at, and even a lot of other Montech cases. You have a lot of kind of whatever these are, sort of blade effects in pretty much any color you'd ever want. And slightly different blade effects. Most of the effects on this case are pretty terrible. I'd say really the only thing you'd be wanting to do with this internal RGB header, with this internal RGB controller, is solid color. Otherwise the fade in and out does look pretty decent, but going through all of these terrible effects that are almost identical, we get to, well, really all our good ones. So here, going through this effect, just a solid color, fades in and out, and looks pretty nice if you just want to have a solid color but have it be a bit more, I guess, interesting. You can do that in every color. Those are all the colors it'll do it in. And then you can do the kind of blade dim. It looks better in single color than it does in multiple colors, but still doesn't look great. You can do that in any color you'd want, and it can do it slightly differently in every color. And then you have this effect where everything kind of goes, it's a similar blade effect to what we had before, but everything goes faster, which is actually is looking pretty decent. And then of course, last you have solid colors. So that's it for the RGB modes. Pretty decent, and I've worked with this fan hub before. This RGB fan hub slash just 3-pin single speed fan controller is pretty decent, but the fans they attach to it, these fans are pretty good in that they move a lot of air, and the RGB LEDs on them are pretty bright, but they just don't, well, have a ton of different RGB zones, so if you want your case to be doing stuff like the RGB puke effects and slower blade effects, you definitely want to get a case with higher end fans. With that out of the way, opening up the case to look at the cable management options. Alright, on this case, cable management is actually, well, pretty decent. So I guess starting out down in kind of the power supply basement area with the EVGA 450W3 power supply unit that I installed, which is about 5.5 inches long. It leaves us with about 3 inches in between the front of the power supply and the hard drive cage. So keep in mind, in this case, with longer power supplies, you will have a harder time getting the cable management stuff in, especially with a longer, like fully modular power supply. It will be a bit of a pain to get it in here. Other than that, another kind of downside of this case is you get a total of 1 hard drive mount, so you can only mount one 3.5-inch hard drive. Not a huge deal, as that's really all most people have in their builds these days, but well, yeah, only has. Another downside is, in this case, you only get 1 hard drive mount. It's pretty well designed, just standard. It's toolless and, well, only fits 1 hard drive, so keep that in mind if you're interested in. So keep that in mind. If you would want to do a high storage capacity build, you would have to figure out some other way. But in here, they definitely would have had space to put another hard drive mount, and I've seen cases with like very similar like case bodies to this that have 2 hard drive mounts. So really wish they would have done that. That would have, I guess, that only having 1 hard drive mount is pretty much the biggest downside of this case. Other than that, for drive mounts, here kind of in the back of the case, you get 1 2.5-inch SSD mount. You do get another one that I'll show over in the main front part of the case. For cable management, the cable management on this case is pretty great for, well, pretty much this is the best cable management you'll see in a case that doesn't have any sort of like quick route cable management features. So lots of tie down points, plenty of space for the most part in the case. From like the motherboard tray, you're getting about 3/4 of an inch of space, so definitely plenty of room even for like thicker bunches of cables to fit. You do get the nice rubber grommets on 2, or actually, yeah, it's 3 of your cable management pass-through points, but you don't get that on the 2 up here for your 8-pin and rear fan, or on the ones down, kind of coming straight out of the power supply basement for plugging in things like your graphics card. I guess moving on to the fan controller. This right here is your fan controller. It's the same fan controller you see in most cheap cases. It is powered by SATA, which is nice to see, and you have your standard 6 total 3-pin ARGB connectors, which 3 of them are used for the stock included fans, so that does leave you with 3 for adding, like, say, a RGB CPU cooler or RGB strips or something. That's really nice to see, especially if you're using this case for, say, an older motherboard that doesn't have RGB connections on the motherboard, or even most cheaper motherboards only have 1, so it's nice to have an included splitter. You also get 6 4-pin fan connectors, and what's pretty interesting is this fan hub will plug into your motherboard with a PWM header to try control the fans. I've tried to get that set up. I'll work on it more later, but I haven't been able to get that working. But that would be really cool if it does work, and I'll mention that later in the video if I can actually figure out how to get that working. Other than that, on here you just have your standard connections of a just 2-pin LED switch going to your front panel I/O on your case, and then the 3-pin ARGB to your motherboard. A really nice thing that I forgot to mention earlier is on this case, a lot of the time on cheaper cases for your RGB button, they'll like repurpose a reset button, but this one they actually decided to make it big enough so you can actually click it. On a lot of cheaper cases you see really tiny LED switch buttons that make it so that you have to like on a lot of other cheap cases you see them repurposing the reset button, which means a lot of time you'll have to like press it with a screwdriver or something, which is a pain if you like to frequently change your RGB effect. Alright, so I would definitely recommend this case. This is, I'd say, pretty much the cheapest case I've ever bought that still has that high-end case feel. It's kind of hard to describe it, but on higher-end cases, they kind of just have a different premium feel that you aren't getting on those lower end DIY PC cases, and even a lot of Montech's lower end cases. This case, I'd say, if you're doing a build and can afford it, is definitely worth the step up from something like just like a basic $50 DIY PC case. And if you're looking at more expensive, like $100 to $120 cases, you could save the like 30 to 40 bucks and go with this case, and you probably won't be too disappointed with it. I guess other than that, I wish more companies would include these 200mm fans in their cases. Most cases don't even have the mounts for these, but those 200mm fans are just giving me great temps on this PC, and well, I have 3 other of these cases that I should get great temps on those builds too. For PC flipping, which is what I bought 4 of these cases for, it puts them at kind of an interesting spot. For 55 bucks, definitely worth it, but these cases and like pictures and stuff don't come out too good, and they don't really look any better than cheaper DIY PC cases just in pictures. So if you're just planning on selling PCs right away, probably not worth the extra spending on these cases, but again, everything really changes if you can get it for 55 bucks. At 55 bucks, definitely buy it. At 70, it's still pretty decent, but I would probably wait until Black Friday because you can usually get some pretty good case prices then. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.